Okay, welcome back. We're talking about how to make radio buttons work. So during the break, I went ahead and changed this to red and green just to be able to show what it looks like. So let me bring up my guy. And immediately you should be able to tell there's what I would consider a state validation error. All right, radio buttons are supposed to have one, exactly one, always one choice. Never two and never none. One and exactly one every single time. Well, it looks like I've got it where I start off with an impossible situation where neither one of them is checked. I don't like that, so we need to fix it. So I'm going to go here and pick one of them. It doesn't really matter which one. It's kind of up to you. You know, just pick one. And I'm going to change its checked property to true. Now that'll make one of them. Again, it doesn't matter which one. So now it'll only allow me to have one. I can't have two and I can't have none. All right, so this is, by the way, this is pretty doggone easy to forget. I'm telling you up front, because in any programming scenario, you could be doing C# or C++ or Java or whatever. You're still going to run across a scenario where you're going to create radio buttons and the radio buttons start off in an impossible state. So that's bad. Okay. So now we're going to create an anonymous class in order to deal with this guy. All right. So let's go do that now. So this is kind of lengthy and kind of tedious, and there's obviously following along isn't going to help you that much. You're going to have to do this yourself. So I need to be able to talk to the radio group. All right, so to do that, I have to do, radio group, and it was RG color, I think. And I'm going to have to talk to each one of the radio buttons. Actually, I don't need to talk to the buttons necessarily. Well, I'll show you a trick. Okay, so I'm going to go down to here and I'm going to inflate this guy. Oh, well, wait. Let me go ahead and get this guy so it's happy. Cool. All right, so here we go. I'm going to go down and inflate this guy. So RG color is equal to find view by ID, r.id, our radio group color. Cool. All right. Hey, did I type something wrong here? No? Okay, cool. Just checking. All right, so now that I got this guy, what I want to do is I want to set the event handler. Remember how if we were using the interface technique, I would do, RG, right, color, and there's a guy for set the on-checked change listener, right? That's what I want to do, okay? So normally what you would do is you would put, if you were using the interface, you would just use this, because this is a synonym for the current class. And then somewhere in that class would be a specialized event handler. But we're not doing it that way. We're going to use an inner anonymous class right there, smack dab where we are inside those parentheses. Now, the designer is kind of funky. See how I put my cursor right there and I hit return? Okay, so I've split this guy so that he doesn't like that, does it? I mean, he right? I get a bunch of red squigglies in there because I need something in that spot. So anyway, I'm gonna hit that. So that gives me some room to type. And so now instead of having this, I'm going to actually start with the word new. Because remember, an anonymous class has to be instantiated with a new keyword, right? It's just that we just don't assign it a name. That's all, right? That's kind of all we do. So here we go. I'm going to say new, and then I'm going to tell it that it's a radio group on check change listener. Okay. Now, this actually, look, I'm going to go ahead and tell you this is a little confusing, but just bear with me. What I created here was actually kind of sort of like an interface. And so you think, wait a minute, can you use the new keyword on an interface? Not normally, but in an anonymous scenario, I'm basically saying this thing, whatever the heck it is, is going to inherit from. So this is almost the same thing as saying creating a concrete class with inheritance. Okay, it's a little weird. Just bear with me. Anyway, it filled out some cool stuff for me, which I kind of like. So now basically all I have to do is just basically say, hey, so which one is checked? Okay. So for example, the checked ID is going to tell me which one of these guys is the one that's checked, because I fixed the state problem. There's only going to be one of them, right? Okay, cool. So basically all I have to do is just say if the checked ID, okay, so I could say is checked. Well, hang on a second. Okay, let's just do this. Let's do RB. Doggone it. I was gonna try to not do that. Yeah. Okay, I got no choice but to radio button. I was just trying to make it easy without having to do this part, but doggone it. Green, of course, if he helps you spell it right, doggone it. Okay, cool. And then I have to tell it that what these guys are. And I don't need to go inflate these guys. Actually, I don't necessarily have to inflate them, okay? I just need to know, yeah, I do, doggone it. Okay. RB green, red is equal to find view by ID, r.id, RB red, and then we do another one. RB green is equal to find view by ID, r.id, RB green. Okay, cool. So some check has changed, but we don't really know which one that is. Okay, I've got a checked ID, but I don't know which one that is. So if I say checked ID is equal to r.id.rb green, okay, then I know the checked ID. Doggone it. Dang, if I could type. Okay, this will tell me that I'm actually clicked on the green guy. So now I can spit out a message. I'm going to use the ET display like we did before. Whoop. And I'm going to say set text. You selected green. Cool. And then, of course, you could have a switch statement in here. Like if you had more than like 3 or 4 of them, it would kind of make sense to put a switch statement in, wouldn't you think? But since there's only 2 of them here, I'm just going to do a separate if statement. I guess if I knew in advance there was only going to be 2, well, then I basically could have just done an else, but that's beside the point. So I'm going to do this as red. And let's go see if this thing actually works. All right. So here's our guy. So when I click on this guy, it says, hey, you selected green. Oop, you selected red. Okay, isn't that pretty cool? Now this is an example of an anonymous class being used inside an event handler. Do you see how it kind of sort of worked? I know it's a little weird, and maybe this takes a little bit getting used to, but here's just how it works. So I use the same old set on collect thing, blah, 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 as I would in the interface model, except instead of just saying this, I went ahead and did all this part, where I created an anonymous class which implemented an interface. It provided the interface for me, thank you very much. And now all I basically have to do is just check to see if, hey, which one? I mean, I know the checked ID, I just don't know which one. So a switch statement or something to tell you what it is, and then you can spit some sort of message out. Okay, cool. Again, if all I wanted to see was which one was being used, like not in the immediate model, but in the deferred model, all I basically have to do is just go to that button and say, hey, Mr. Button, are you clicked? I mean, are you checked? That's it. It's kind of simple. So I'm not really going to demo that, although it's simple enough. I think you can figure it out. Okay. So that is how the radio buttons work. It takes a radio group to pull it off, plus you have to put the buttons in there, plus you have some choices. Now I cannot use the on click in the designer thing. That won't work because I don't have something in the designer that says on check change listener. Okay, I don't have that. So I only have two choices: the interface technique, which we used last time, and then this technique, which is the anonymous class guy. Okay. All right. So that's how this thing works. So one more time, let's just pretend like I don't care, and let's go down to about the immediate model, and when I click on the button, I'm going to have it display what the current radio button is, right? Okay, no big deal. So down here on my guy, I'm going to say, ET display set text. And then basically what I want to do is I want to extract from that which button it is, right? So I could do something kind of sort of, well, doggone it. I could do something like this where I'd say int selected is equal to, the radio group get checked radio button ID, and then I could have like another switch statement or something, or another, something like, if, right? So if I say selected is equal to, r.id dot whatever, this green will then do something, right? So I don't have to have an anonymous class if I'm just doing the immediate thing, right? I'm sorry, the deferred method. I just got to go in here and type, green, okay? All right, let me just show you what I'm talking about just to make sure this thing works. So let's just run this guy. And so this part still has, that. But when I click this, it's just going to say, oh, ha, 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 ha. It's going to come back and tell me, hey, you've selected the green. All right, so I did it in two ways. I did both the immediate thing and the deferred thing. Got it? Good. Okay, I think we've beaten that one to death. So exploring the palette part 2 on page 315. This is a big chapter. There's an awful lot of stuff in here. So the next one we're going to talk about is the switch. And by the way, Java has a switch statement, and C++ has a switch statement in the language. That is clearly not what we're talking about. We're talking about a widget here. Okay, so let's go back to our guy and go back to here, and I'm going to grab me a switch, and I'm going to drop him again right before the button. Okay, and luckily he came up with the right idea of not having to consume everything. So switches are kind of weird. Let's call it now. What's the difference between a switch, for example, and a radio button or a combo box or one of those guys? I mean, there's not that much different. A switch basically, if you're trying to make a decision on whether or not you ought to use a switch or a checkbox, ask yourself this question. If this is the only single thing that I'm trying to do, then I would use a switch. If I'm trying to do multiple things, like I'm ordering a pizza, and it says, do you want anchovies, cheese, or pepperoni, right? I would probably use a checkbox, right? Because I want to be able to select multiple things. But the switch basically says, this is a higher level things like, is this for delivery or take home? I mean, delivery or pickup, I guess. Nor is it a fundamental thing. It's one of those things where no other choices are involved. Typically, a switch is on and off, like turning on the airplane mode or turning off the airplane mode. So typically switches are designed for high-level philosophical on-off scenarios, not for making individual little changes. Okay, so that's just a philosophical way of describing when you would use one versus the other. And as usual, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark.